Hi everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me? How's everyone doing? Can you hear me? It's very important someone tells me they can hear me. Oh yes, you can hear me. Because I don't know. I don't want to be talking and nobody hears me. Well, welcome everyone. I saw a lot of people were coming to the chat room early. Thank you. And I can see, well, there's so many people I know here. I'm going to say hello to everyone. I'm just reading the comments now. And Florin, what if Robin is going to sing "O Canada"? Well, Florin, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not going to sing "O Canada." So if that's why you're here, you can leave. But I will talk about many things about Canada. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about Canada, about studying English and working in Canada and emigrating to Canada. And this is just a light video, which means I'm not going into too much detail. And the reason for that is because I don't know all the details. Okay, I know a lot of things about Canada, working in Canada, immigrating to Canada, but I don't know all the rules, all the policies, all the laws. So whatever I talk about today, I tried to make it 100% fact, but I could be making a mistake here and there because, policy changes every year, and sometimes information on the internet is not changed as quick. Now, I did put some links below about studying in Canada and working in Canada and emigrating to Canada. And what I found when I was doing my research before this video is there's two kinds of websites. There's the Canadian government websites, and then there are private websites. Of course, private businesses. They give a lot of information, but of course they're trying to get you to use their services. But I think the best sites are the Canadian government websites. They're not trying to get money, and they're giving the most up-to-date information. Okay, Ifra Tika Gerson. Oh. All right, Florin. Florin is asking in the chat about emigrating and immigrating. That is a good question, and I'm going to answer that a little bit later. So I'll save your questions and ask me again later because that's a good question. Let's just get on with the topic. And as always, I'm having the introduction period now, and then I'm going to talk about the topic, and then after the topic is when we have our question time, okay? Okay. All right, so Canada, as most of you know, I am from Canada. And this is what I'm going to talk about. Again, not too much detail. I'm going to talk about Canada a little bit in case you don't know. I'm going to talk about studying English in Canada. I know a lot about studying English in Canada. I'm going to talk about working in Canada because some of you want to work, and emigrating. And you can see right there I'm using the word emigrating, not immigrating. And I'll talk about that later. And then I'm going to give my own comments about Canada, and then if you guys have questions about Canada, I'm going to answer those questions. But again, save your questions for later. So if you don't know, just briefly about Canada, the population, 36, almost 37, it's probably 37 million now. So considering the size, it's a small country, and yeah, a lot of you guys are in Asia, and those countries have a lot of population, so Canada's population is quite small considering the size. And the official spoken languages are English and French, and of course English and French are equal in Canada. English does not have more power than French. The Canadian government treats English speakers and French speakers equal, and they give them this equal opportunities and everything. Do every Canadian is every Canadian bilingual? Does every Canadian speak English and French? No. Not every Canadian speaks English and French. Especially, I come from Western Canada. So in Western Canada, there's not too many French people. So I took French in middle school for 1 year, and then I had to take it again in university. But I cannot speak French. Yeah, I have a little bit of vocabulary. I know some expressions, but I do not speak French. So a lot of Canadians do not speak French, and a lot of people in the French part of Canada, they're not so good at English. We don't have to be bilingual. The main cities, if you can see, I'm talking about the main cities there. Toronto is probably the most famous city, and it is the largest city with almost 5.6 million people. Now that's Toronto metropolitan area. When I say metropolitan area, that means Toronto and the suburbs, the smaller cities around Toronto. So that creates a big city. That's the Toronto area, but that's the biggest. Montreal is a French city. That's in the province of Quebec, the French province, and that's the second largest city. And I heard, I don't know if it's true, I didn't Google it before, but I heard that half of Montreal is actually English speakers, native English speakers. So I don't know. So Montreal has a lot of English speakers, also a lot of French speakers, of course. It's in the French province. Vancouver is very popular with Asians because it's on the west coast. It's the closest to Asia. So I've been to all the cities listed here, but I've been to Vancouver a lot. And yes, there are a lot of Asians there, a lot of Chinese and Korean and Filipino, and I'll talk about that later. Ottawa, the capital city, I've been there too. It's a beautiful city, really beautiful city, not much population. That's part of the reason it's beautiful. Calgary and Edmonton, this is closer to me. Edmonton is where I went to university. I'll talk about that. Calgary and Edmonton are beautiful cities, and they are great for studying English. I'll talk about that later. I really don't like Toronto and Vancouver for studying English. And I list at the bottom here is a small city called Fort McMurray. And that is where I was born. It is it's north of Edmonton, so Edmonton would be the closest next city. And it's very north. It's very cold in the winter. And I saw there's 66,000 people now. When I was growing up, there was about 35,000 people. The population of Fort McMurray doubled in the early 2000s because Fort McMurray is famous for oil. So, of course, in the 2000s, the oil price went up, so a lot of people got jobs in Fort McMurray. And then in the last few years, oil has gone down, and I think the real population of Fort McMurray, when the oil is up, is around 80,000. But when the oil is down, it drops down to around 60,000. So the population in that city really changes a lot. Okay. And there's a quick map of Canada. You can't see my cursor, so you have to listen to my voice. If you look on your left side, you can see Vancouver and Victoria, very left, in the province of British Columbia. And then the next province is Alberta, and then you see Calgary and Edmonton. Edmonton in the center of Alberta. Now, if you drive about 5 hours north of Edmonton, you get to my hometown, Fort McMurray. It's so small they don't put it on this map. And then the next province, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. This is Western Canada. And then you go east, Ontario, Quebec is the French province, and then far east is the Maritime provinces. That's Eastern Canada. And Western Canada and Eastern Canada are usually a little different in how they speak English and politics. And that's the university I went to, University of Alberta. My major, English language and literature, and my minor, Canadian history. So yeah, it's a big university in Canada. I hope some of you heard of it, maybe not. Okay, so that was a little bit about me and Canada. Let's talk about learning English in Canada. So a lot of my students go to Canada, and they usually, from Korea, I'm talking about Korean students, they usually go to Vancouver. And I really don't like students who go to Vancouver. The reasons for that is, Vancouver has a lot of Koreans living there already. There's a lot of Korean Canadians. There's a lot of Korean tourists. There's a lot of Korean students. And there's also not just Korean students, there's a lot of international students. So when my Korean student goes to Vancouver, they make a lot of Korean friends, and then they make a lot of international friends, and usually they never make a Canadian friend. So Vancouver, in my opinion, is not a good place to study English. For, I would say, anybody who wants to go to Canada to study English. Vancouver is a beautiful city. It is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. You should definitely visit Vancouver. But to spend 1 year, 6 months, 1 year studying English, there's better places. And over 20 years, yes, I have seen a big difference in my students who've one group of students, they've studied in Vancouver, and one group of students, they've studied in smaller cities in Canada, and almost always the group of students who've studied in smaller cities in Canada, their English is a lot better. And probably Toronto too. Toronto is a very international place. All right, so learn English in Canada, language schools. If you're going to Canada, if you're Korean, you get 6 months visa, just tourist visa if you're Korean. So you don't even need a student visa. And most countries, you don't need a student visa. If you go to Canada and you're just studying English, you don't need the student visa. It depends how large the program is. If it's just a small program, you don't need the visa. So my recommendation always is stay out of the language schools. Language schools, and especially Vancouver, they just take your money and they give you very little experience in Canada. They give you very little chance to talk to native speakers because they control your time, they control your schedule, they control your money. Stay away from language schools. I'm sure many language schools are going to hate me for saying that, but if you go to Canada to study, there's other ways you can study. Uh, if your visa or your tourist visa allows you 3 months, you can you can live there 3 months and join all kinds of clubs, right? You can go out and meet Canadians every day, and just naturally you would improve your English faster than a language school. But, language schools, if you need to go to language school, and some people do, yeah, do it, but not in Vancouver. Go to a smaller city like Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa. These are great places to study English. All right, so I don't have all the details. I know a little more about language schools, but I'm not going to talk about that now. As I put on the slide, check links below. If you want to know more about studying in Canada, check the links below or ask me later. I'm going to move on. I only have a few more slides. Work in Canada. So working holiday, they call it the International Experience Canada, IEC. And the requirements, you need a passport, of course, the age, 18 to 30, clean criminal record. Okay, you did not commit a crime in your country, and you have to have $2,500 in your bank account before you come to Canada. So you can apply. There's links below to the government website, and I've talked to a lot of students who've done this program, and from their experience, it's always very difficult to get a job. Almost impossible to get a good job, all right? So it's difficult to get a terrible job, and your job is always in service, restaurants, cleaning at the hotel. Like, these are jobs, but, they're difficult, right? Dirty, dangerous, and difficult. Those are the kind of jobs you're going to get. And these jobs pay money, but a lot of these students on the working holiday, they told me, they can't afford to live alone, so they have to have roommates. And very often there's 2 or 3 of them living in one room, especially if they go to Vancouver or Toronto. Rents are so expensive. A working holiday, the amount of hours you get, there's a limit to the amount of hours. I'm sorry, I don't know. But that wouldn't be enough to save money. You could make money in Canada, but you're not going to save so much money if you're in the big cities. I would recommend the Australian working holiday. I know I'm from Canada, but I am going to promote Australia because they have a great working holiday program. It's difficult to get jobs there, but when you do get a job, you get a lot more money because their minimum wage is like 22 Australian dollars an hour, which is great, something like that. So I've talked to people who've worked in Australia. They've gone to Australia working holiday. They've worked, they made friends, and then they leave Australia. They have a lot of money. Different experience in Canada. It's up to you. If you want professional work, maybe you already are a person with a career and you want to, like, for example, you're an engineer and you want to work as an engineer in Canada. That's possible because Canada needs some jobs. Like, there's some jobs, I don't know exactly, but for example, Canada needs nurses. So if you are a nurse in your country and you speak English, it's easier for you to get to Canada to become a nurse. There are some jobs that Canada does not need, and if that is your job, then probably you won't work in Canada, okay? So you really have to check the website to see what kind of jobs they want and what kind of jobs they don't want. But still, it's very difficult to move your career to Canada. Nursing is a little bit easy because of the training. training for nursing. They'll retrain you in Canada. But for something like engineering, the problem is getting a job in Canada. A lot of companies don't recognize your university in your country, right? They don't know about your university and if your engineering degree is good or not. So it can be really hard to get a job. Again, check the links below. And let's move on. There's just a couple more slides. Emigrate to Canada. So I guess now is a good time. What's the difference between immigrate and emigrate? Depends on your location. If you are in Canada and you're coming to Canada, you immigrate to Canada. But if you're in another country and going to Canada, you emigrate. So all of you are not in Canada, and I am not in Canada, so I'm in South Korea right now. You are going to emigrate to Canada. So this is connected to working in Canada. There are several ways to emigrate to Canada. If you really, really want to live in Canada, I have a list here. This is just some of the ways, the most common ways. If you're a skilled worker, again, a nurse or something like that, a job Canada needs, that's a good chance. Self-employed, you have your own company, international company, you're going to move to Canada. Family sponsorship, you have family work, or you have family there that they emigrated there and they became Canadian, they can sponsor you. And Canada needs a lot of caregivers. Caregivers are people that take care of children, and they take care of old people, and they take care of sick people. So if that's something you're interested in, that's a really good way to get into Canada. Is if you have no problem taking care of kids, old people, or sick people, caregiver is not an easy way, but a really good way. And I noticed in Canada there's a lot of Filipinos who are caregivers. So I guess that's what they're trying to do to get into Canada. Refugees, of course, Canada accepts refugees from all kind, in your country. If you're having trouble politically or something really bad is happening in your country, Canada is very generous to refugees. And investor, that just means you have a lot of money. If you're rich, yeah, you can emigrate to any country if you're rich, because every country likes to accept rich people. So if you have money, yeah, that's probably the easiest way to get into Canada. You have a lot of money. That's the truth of the world. And I'll just close it up here with comments on Canada. Canada is diverse. It has a lot of diversity. And what does that mean? Diverse means there's so many different people, so many different cultures, so many different kinds of English, so many kinds of English accents, so many kinds of food. It is a diverse place. It is compared to Asia, where I've traveled a lot. Canada is very diverse. But racism and discrimination exist. Okay, now Canada is diverse, but there's still racism. I don't know how bad it is because I'm usually not a victim of racism in Canada. And there's discrimination. It is illegal in Canada for discrimination, but it happens. So, for example, accent. You go to the job interview and your English accent is terrible. They might not hire you because of your accent. Your educational background, I told you that before. They might not recognize your degree from your university if it's from another country. and culture. So the way you dress and the way your mannerisms or customs. Yeah, Canada is not too friendly. Canadians will say, yes, we accept everyone, we are diverse, but still, in every country, there's racism and discrimination, and that is also in Canada. It's not paradise for foreigners. The social welfare is great. Uh, Canada takes care of its people. So if you're poor or you have some disability, Canada will take care of you. A single mother, Canada will take care of you and help you to get educated. I have healthcare question mark. Healthcare is free in Canada. So whatever problem you have, you can go to the hospital and you never have to pay money. You have to pay money for medicine, but not the treatment. But healthcare is not perfect in Canada. Because it is free, there's problems. The first problem is you have to wait. So if you need surgery, something serious like surgery, you're not going to get that quick. All right, you're going to wait 1 or 2 years before you get your surgery. So things like that. Healthcare is good, but you got to wait for everything. So compared to Korea, you can get things done the same month, same day sometimes. But Canada, no, you got to wait. You want to see a specialist in Canada, you got to wait 6 months. So healthcare, pros and cons. And social problems. Vancouver, Toronto, they have gangs, drugs, guns, sex crimes. You know, it's like Canada, people think Canada is so safe. In many ways, Canada is safe, but, you know, if I'm walking in Asia, I'm usually not scared to walk late at night, but I'm scared in Canada. I'm scared in Canada. Something's going to happen to me. All right, so that's all about Canada, and I guess that took me almost 30 minutes. So I have some questions here. You know, what do you know about Canada? Do you know any famous Canadians? Would you like to travel, study, or emigrate to Canada? Why? Now is a good time to ask questions about Canada. I'm just going to read the comments to catch up what's happening. I was talking too much again. Florian, can we study in French in Canada? Yeah, you can go to Quebec. You can study French in any city in Canada, but I would recommend you go to Quebec, the province of Quebec, 2 major cities there, Montreal, Quebec City. Study French there if you want. Inchonmir, hi, Sabrina. Hello. And then the Russian name. Who's the Russian guy? I can't read Russian or this Cyrillic alphabet. Wow, I dreamed of studying in Canada. Grace Lim, message retracted. Luciana Dewey. Do you have info about summer camp exchange in Canada? Yeah, for kids or for adults? Well, for kids, there's a lot of summer camps and exchange programs in Canada. I'm sorry I don't have the information now, but that's easy to find in Canada or on Google. There's lots of kids from all over the world visit Canada because it's easier to get into Canada than the US, right? So a lot of people want to study in Canada. Layla, I would like to visit Canada because it is a beautiful country and its people are friendly. It is beautiful. There are many beautiful places in Canada. People are friendly, especially outside the big cities. People are really friendly outside big cities. Musawar. al-Hashmi. I want to visit Canada and meet with Mr. Robin Shaw. Well, I don't live in Canada anymore. I live in the world. I've been living in Korea, and in the future I'll live in another country. I don't live in Canada because Canada's great, but too cold. Too cold. Ugh. Casablanca trainer. Yes, I like this about Canada, that it accepts refugees. The current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he's a liberal Prime Minister. He likes to bring in refugees. I see it's not easy to live in Canada. Every country has its problems, but Canada's expensive compared to Asia. You really have to get a job. But yeah, life is not easy. Stanley, hello. Greetings from Malaysia. Hello. Carrie Page, please explain about gender equality in Canada. Canada, I think this is one reason women, when they travel to Canada, they love Canada because gender equality is great. The last time I was in Canada, I think was 2013, actually, a long time ago. And I was surprised because there's no gender line. Like, you will see police women and policemen equally. You will see truck drivers, men and women truck drivers. So the women are doing truck driving, and I was very surprised at every job, it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. Nora, Gamey, is it very cold? Yes, it's very cold. Depending where you are in Vancouver, or in Canada, because Vancouver is not so cold. But where I'm from, it's so cold. So if weather is the issue, go to Vancouver. Because Vancouver, sometimes they have green Christmas. Not white Christmas. White Christmas is with snow. Green Christmas means there's still grass. No snow. So Vancouver is better. Kylie Minogue is from Canada, I think. No, I think she's from Australia. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's from Australia. Australia? Grace, I want to go to Canada to see the Aurora. Aurora is in Canada we don't say Aurora, we say Northern Lights. So you look up in the sky and you can see the lights. And yeah, I hear a lot of people say they want to go to Canada to see the Aurora. And I usually tell them, it's not that special. I'm sorry, I don't want to break your fantasy about Aurora. But, I always say, imagine a rainbow. If you look at a rainbow, rainbows are in every country. If you look at a rainbow, how long are you going to watch a rainbow? So usually you look at a rainbow for 10, 20 seconds. That's enough. Maybe a minute maximum. Nobody really watches rainbows all day. But rainbows are more beautiful than the Aurora, the Northern Lights. Because the Northern Lights are usually just green, nothing special. It dances a little bit. You're going to get bored very fast watching that. Rainbows are more interesting. My opinion. Haru, I'm really eager to move to Canada, but I don't like cold. Don't go to Canada. I have one question, Professor. Is it possible if I study in another country, then I want to be researcher in Canada? It's possible, of course. If you go into master's or PhD, you're going to study master's level or PhD level in another country, then your research is important, right? What kind of publications you have, kind of ranking. And if you have good research, then it's easy to go to Canada. But if you're just basic researcher, it probably won't be so easy to move to Canada. My advice, if your goal is to be a researcher in Canada, you need to go to graduate school in Canada. That would be best because you are making your network, you're getting to know people, other researchers, and you will be included in the club. But if you're coming from another country, you're more of an outsider. That's my opinion. That's not always true, right? But something to think about. Flora, how different is French language from Canada than French language from France? Maybe you're asking about France. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about French and the French differences. Yeah, I know it is different. Just like England and US and Canada have different English. I know it is different, but I don't know like which words or how much it's different. Murrain, I love cold. Ugh. This is not cold. It is freezing in Canada. Like I say, I grew up, as I said, my hometown was Fort McMurray, very north. So in Fort McMurray, this temperature was very special to me because in the morning I would wake up, and if I saw this temperature, and I saw it many times, that meant the school was closed. I didn't have to go to school. So it's very, very cold, so cold that this is when the school closed. If it's minus 20 or minus 30, I have to walk to school. But minus 32, school is closed. And yeah, it gets cold in northern Canada. I don't want to have another winter in northern Canada. Florin, how to find love in Canada? Dating app? You can download a dating app and start talking to Canadian women today. I don't know. I don't know how to find love in Canada. I'm not a guy, I'm a woman, and I'm not from Russia. I'm from Kazakhstan. Okay, yeah. What's your name? Welcome. I know many people from Kazakhstan. Good to hear from you. Florin, how can I go to Canada if I'm over 30 years old? Travel. Do you want to live there, Florin? You can just travel. If not, if you really want to emigrate to Canada, then you have to have some job skill that Canada really needs. Grace, is there colder than Korean winter? Yeah, Vancouver is better than Korean winter. Vancouver's temperature is better than Seoul. But other parts of Canada, Edmonton, Toronto, Montreal, they are colder than Korea. But not just colder, more snow. A lot more snow. Okay, Florin, France. How are schools like in Canada? Nora, what kind of schools are you talking about? Public schools, language schools, universities? What kind of schools? Carrie Page, I want to be a filmmaker in Canada. Do you know about Canada film industry? One of my favorite movie directors is a Canadian. Well, the most famous Canadian movie director is James Cameron. So you must be talking about him. He directed Titanic and Avatar. Those must be your favorite movies. Canada film industry sucks. There's no good movies from Canada that I know of. I haven't seen a good movie. Maybe there's some good movie. I haven't seen it yet, but from my knowledge, Canadian film and TV is not good, and there's a reason for that because South of Canada is the US and Hollywood. And anybody with talent in Canada just goes to Hollywood, okay? Because it's the same language. So, like, as you all know, Justin Bieber is Canadian. Now, Justin Bieber cannot, if he only stayed in Canada, he would never be famous. Okay, there's not such a big Canadian music industry. So Justin Bieber had to move to the US to be famous. So a lot of talent moves to the US. Same with Avril Lavigne and The Weeknd, if you know The Weeknd. Cho, what is your hometown? I said earlier my hometown was Fort McMurray. That's in Alberta, Western Canada. Florin, how to avoid frostbite in Canada? Well, Canadians are pretty good at avoiding frostbite. We know it's dangerous, and growing up, our parents are always telling us, wear gloves, hat, scarf. So frostbite is a serious thing. I froze my hands many times in Canada, and sometimes I have strange feeling in my hands. I think because I froze them so much. Not froze enough to get frostbite, but it's cold. Prakar, what is the cost of a suite home in Canada? It depends on your area. If it's Vancouver or Toronto, that's like $1 million because so many international people buy homes. Like Vancouver, there's a big problem with Chinese people in China buying a lot of property in Canada. They buy the house. They don't even live in the house. They just buy a lot of property, and then the price goes up. And people are not even living in these houses. So that's an issue in Vancouver and Toronto. Smaller cities, you can buy a house $200,000, $300,000. Florin, how I immerse myself in Canadian culture? Go to Canada. Immerse means to be, covered in Canadian culture, surrounded by Canadian culture. You got to move to Canada. Outside of Canada, there's very little culture. You can listen to music and TV shows and you can find TV shows and movies, but that's not going to help you too much. You have to go to Canada. H.W. Cho, do you like Avril Lavigne? I love her music. I'm not a fan of her, but I don't hate her. If I hear her song, it's okay. Florin, did you meet native Canadians? Did you meet native Canadians? I am native Canadian. I was born in Canada. I grew up. I met native Oh, you're talking about natives. Okay. Yes. I understand. Sorry. When I grew up in Fort McMurray, we were near a reserve, and the natives live on the reserve, and a lot of my friends were from the reserve. And the native reserve is not a good place. Lots of alcohol abuse, violence. I had two friends, Bobby and Cyrus. They were natives. And every day I saw their father beating them. And they had all kinds of bruises and stuff. There's a lot of suicides on reserves. And it's a terrible place. But I've seen it. I met them. I'm not in contact with them anymore. Laura Gamey, what is your favorite American TV show? Do you like American TV shows? Yes, I love them. Everyone loves American TV shows. I watch Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, all kinds of shows. I really like American TV shows. Okay, that's it for Canadian questions. All right, I'll just move on to general questions about anything in English. If you have any English questions, now is the time to ask me. Florin is asking, can you sing "O Canada"? To be honest, Florin, I think I forgot all the words to "O Canada." It's been about 25 years since I sang "O Canada." And actually the lyrics changed in "O Canada." So I don't know the new "O Canada." I'm not very nationalistic, all right? I'm from Canada. I'm proud. I'm Canadian, but I'm not always, oh, Canada is the greatest country in the world. That is not me. Saad, hey Robin, sorry I'm late. By the way, you're looking good. Thank you, Saad. Saad, you lived in British Columbia. This is your topic. Okay, any English questions or final questions? Anybody? If not, I will start to close it. Okay, Layla, what is the difference between I'm having my dinner now and eating my dinner now? That's the same thing, Layla. Same thing. Where I find a Korean people village. You mean Koreatown? Almost every big city in the world has Koreatown. Probably in your country somewhere there is Koreatown. It might be small, but people are there. Grace, if Shiri or Papago Google Translate misunderstands what I speak, does it mean I pronounce it wrong? Yes. And that's a good way to practice pronunciation. Voice to text. So that's a good way to pronounce or help your pronunciation. If the computer doesn't understand you, probably something is wrong with your pronunciation. So it helps you to fix your pronunciation so it understands you. When I do voice speech to text, if I speak clearly, it's almost 100%. So what percent are you? Yeah, it's good to check your pronunciation. If the computer understands you, that's good. If the computer understands you, a human will understand you. Oh, I love Game of Thrones 2. Well, Game of Thrones is coming April 2019. Let's watch it together, Nora. Which one is best to use? Both are those have dinner, eat dinner. They mean exactly the same thing. Best, they're the same. Grace. You just have to practice a good test. Grace, if we meet one day, and I hope we do, is you say a sentence and I say a sentence on your phone and see if your phone understands me better. Florin, what is considered unskilled worker? An unskilled worker is someone who didn't go to university. So if you want to work in Canada, minimum is a bachelor's degree. There are other programs to get into Canada to work, like caregiving and in service industry. If you have skills in caregiving and service, those are possible. But if you want a really professional career job, minimum is bachelor's, but probably you need a master's or PhD if you want to. For example, if you want to be an engineer in Canada, you're going to need a master's or a PhD. If you want to be a computer programmer in Canada, you're probably going to need a master's or a PhD. So these are kind of what they mean by skilled. HW Cho, what does degree mean? Celsius or Fahrenheit? It means the same. Well, so these are two temperatures. These are not the same temperature. Fahrenheit is what the US use, and only the US. The rest of the world uses Celsius. But we would read it minus 32, and this symbol means degrees, Fahrenheit. And then Celsius, minus 32 degrees Celsius. So when we say degrees, that just means the amount when talking about temperature. So both of these we use degrees, but this is different, Fahrenheit and Celsius. These are different systems. Okay. Florin, for the people that have jobs, if you want to move your job, you need to you have to find a company. Well, another way is if you find a company in Canada and they say, we really need Florin because he's a skilled worker, we really need his skills, that company will sponsor you. But that's really hard to do unless you're special, Florin. Remember, Florin, there's millions of people around the world trying to get into Canada every year, and you're competing with them. So if you really want to go to Canada, it's possible, but it's hard. Okay, it's hard. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of money to get there. Vanvo, hello, nice to meet you on here. This is the first time I joined your channel. Welcome, Vanvo. Nice to meet you too. Nora, do you believe in ghosts or vampires? That's not an English question. Why are you talking about ghosts and vampires? I'm here to answer English questions. And the answer is no, I don't believe in ghosts or vampires. Layla, why say I'm having coffee? Don't say I'm drinking coffee. You can say I'm drinking coffee. Who told you don't say I'm drinking coffee? Layla, you're looking for the best. All right, I'm going to make it simple for you. Although I don't care, I want you to use having. I'm having dinner. I'm having coffee. Okay, so for the rest of your life now, just use having. Problem solved. No stress. Don't worry. Grace, please, Robin, say he is quite handsome. He is quite handsome. He is quiet and sun. So you have to enunciate. Enunciate is say clearly. He is quite handsome. That's how I would talk to my phone. He is quite handsome. Usually if you say he is quite handsome, your phone is not going to get that. HWHO, thanks. Rizal Fikri, would you like to entertaining us with your posh accent? I'm not British. I don't have a posh accent. That's describing upper class British accent. There is no upper class Canadian accent. Prakar, difference between recently and lately. That's similar, Prakar. I don't know of any difference. Recently, I was sick. Lately, I've been sick. There's a slight difference in usage. But I'm sorry, Prakar, I can't think of all, because there's so many different ways to use these words. But basically, they mean the same thing, but there's probably some situations I can't think right now of where we would use recently and where we would use lately. Now, Prakar, I could go onto Google and check that, but Prakar, I want you to go onto Google and check that. I'm sorry, Prakar, I don't have the answer for that. There's just too many ways to use those words. Can businessmen emigrate easier to Canada? Florian, I'm going to say yes, because usually businessmen have money. Money helps. Every country. Money helps. So if you wanted to open a business in Canada, I think, I'm not sure, Florian, but if you can buy a house and open a business, you can get into Canada. There's a good chance to get into Canada. If you could do those two things, buy a house and open a business, you could probably get the investor's visa really easy. I love Canada. I love every city, especially Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. I have heard that Game of Thrones, it's a Canadian TV series. No, Game of Thrones is a British series. It's the reason they use British accent is it's filmed in England. Grace, how much money do I have to live in Canada? Good question. One reason I don't live in Canada because it is so expensive. So if you want to live in Canada and you want to be middle class, you have to be married and you have to have a dual income. Dual income means the husband works a good job and the wife works a good job. Then Canada can be comfortable for middle class. If you have a regular job and your wife doesn't work or your husband doesn't work, it is difficult to survive in Canada middle class. Okay, so to live middle class, two people, the husband and wife, they have to have good jobs or normal jobs. H.W. Cho, do you know Korean word migan? I want to know in English, it is middle of eyebrows. No, I don't know. That's a Korean question, and you want me to translate? Sorry, I can't help you. Thanks for your answer. Tom, Professor Shaw, please tell me more about Edmonton. The two main cities I lived in Canada were Fort McMurray and Edmonton. Edmonton is where I went to university, so I lived in Edmonton for about 10 years. Edmonton is famous for two things. The first thing is it has a very big shopping mall. It used to be the biggest shopping mall in the world. I don't know if it still is. That was West Edmonton Mall. And Edmonton is famous for the Edmonton Oilers. That's the hockey team in Edmonton. And of course, all Canadians are crazy about hockey. So every Canadian is going to know about the Edmonton Oilers. So Tom, you are American. I don't think you care. You're from southern states. I don't think there's hockey down there. I don't think there's ice down there. Grace, only married person. Well, Grace, I don't know your situation, but Canada's expensive. You can live in Canada, but I mean, to live very comfortably, single people, it's not so much. You got to work hard compared to Korea. Vanvo, can you share me any tips to get better while listening to English? Well, Vanvo, listen at your level. So my first tip was don't try to listen to too high of a level English. Many students, they start listening like CNN or BBC. It's too high. Try to listen at your level and listen to stuff you like to listen to. If you like to listen to music, listen to music. If you like to listen to podcasts, podcasts are also great. Find a good podcast. There's podcasts on every topic these days. Rizal Fikri, which one the best land for grain? Is it Canada or US? You mean grain as in wheat? Agriculture? Probably the US. US has more farmland than Canada. Most of Canadian land is frozen all year. You cannot farm. Nora Gaming, what is the difference between look and watch? That's a very common question. Did you check YouTube, or not YouTube, Google or YouTube? Because we usually you look at things, or usually you watch TV or you watch a movie. Or you look at things, like I'm looking at my phone. I just look at it. I'm not watching my phone. I just look at it. I looked at the marker. I'm watching the marker. Okay, so it's a little different. Watching is using your eyes more. Grace, I meant money amount for investment in immigration. Sorry, Grace, I'm gonna say the minimum should be about $400,000. $400,000 Canadian. Because again, you got to live there, so you got to buy a house and you got to have some sort of business. It's going to cost about $400,000. Hockey. Thomas says hockey. Grown men chasing a puck around with sticks. Wow, Tom, I didn't know you know so much about hockey. You know what a puck is? You know they use sticks? That is hockey. You forgot the fighting. They also fight in hockey. Florin, what is the level of English or French needed to live in Canada? Good question. When you're trying to get into Canada, there's often forms you have to fill out, and you get points on these forms. I've never done the forms, so I don't know, but I've heard some forms have points. So you can get more points to help you get into Canada if you speak English very well, and French very well. You get more points if you speak both languages. But Florin, to be honest, there's a lot of Canadians that don't speak English very well. Every time I go to Canada, I can see some new working holiday students or new permanent resident people, and their English not so good sometimes. Florin, should I learn Canadian slang? As I talked about last night about slang is generational. I wouldn't even know, because I've been out of Canada for 20 years. I wouldn't be up to date on Canadian slang, and I would say no. Again, you don't need to study slang unless you hear it. So if you talk to a Canadian, he uses some slang, know that slang. If you go to Canada and everyone is using that slang, then it's time to learn that slang. But before you hear it, don't bother to learn the slang. Thomas, you're really not selling Canada for me. My advice to everyone here is Canada is a great country if you have children. It's a great place for raising children. If you do not have children, or you don't plan to have children, I would say Canada, it's a good place, but the advantage of Canada is raising children. But if you're not raising children, the advantages are less. Nurain, Fatima Ahmed. In Canada, which city you like to living with your family for good and children's future? I would go back to Edmonton or Calgary. Maybe Calgary. It's a little bit warmer in Calgary, Alberta. If I had to recommend one city for a family to go to Canada, I would recommend Calgary, Alberta. British Columbia also has a lot of amazing smaller cities. Not Vancouver. I would never recommend Vancouver, but Surrey, Kamloops, these are smaller cities that are great. The U.S. to give business visa, $250,000, or get living visa, $1 million. Yeah, it's expensive, Grace. They want the rich people. HW Cho, no Korean, man. I'm going to remove your comment. I have the power. No Korean. This is an English broadcast. Everyone is speaking English. Why are you speaking Korean? You can speak English. All right, I lost. How can I... Florida, again. Wow, you're very interested in Canada. How I find out if I know the useful words to live in Canada? You know the useful words to live in Canada. Florida, honestly, if you wanted to go to Canada, your language is enough. But what you need to study is hockey, because Canadians like to talk about hockey. So if you don't know about hockey, or you don't know the hockey words or the hockey slang, it's going to be very difficult to talk to a lot of Canadians. So my advice to you, your English is enough to survive in Canada, but if you really want to get immersed into Canada, learn about hockey and watch hockey and understand hockey. That is the key to living and interacting with Canadians. Tom, hockey is mixed martial arts on ice. Yes, it is. Well, not really. When I first started watching hockey in the 1980s, the hockey player didn't have to wear a helmet, but these days hockey players have to wear a helmet and a visor. So in the 1980s you could see a lot of blood, but these days not so much blood, unless the puck hits their teeth. Usually hockey players, they lose all their teeth, so that's the only time you see blood these days. Grace. Oh yeah, all right. So you are Korean. I like to live in Korea, but because of microdust, I feel sometimes to escape here. So you want to say I feel I want to escape here sometimes. I agree with you, Grace. Korea has terrible air pollution. I want to live somewhere else. As I get older, yeah, this air is terrible. I understand you, Grace. And probably a lot of the people watching today, they're in large cities. Air is not clean. Canada is a good place to go if you want clean air, especially Calgary. What about Florin asks, what about going for adventure in Canada? Yeah, there's lots of adventures in Canada. Lots of nature. Go camping, Florin. It's amazing. You can go... There's hundreds of thousands of lakes. I'm not kidding. You can go to a lake in Canada camping for a week. You will not see another human. You can have your own private lake. You'll only see animals. Nora, we will do it today. We are going to do it today. All right, so Nora, you're asking about the difference between will and going to. Basically, they're the same thing, and native speakers will use will and going to. But usually on the English test, Will is stronger than going to. They mean the same thing, but will is more like 100%, and going to is just maybe a plan. But usually they're the same thing when we're speaking English. Rizal Fikri, in your opinion, who is a native Canadian? Are they Indian, like in the USA? The natives, well, Indian is not the right word to use anymore. We should use natives. So the natives in Canada and the US, yeah, they were there first. That's an issue I'm not going to go into, but we should call them natives. We shouldn't call them Indians anymore. That's not right to say that anymore. Florin, how much maple syrup Canada have? That's an interesting question, Florin, about maple syrup, because Canada is famous for maple syrup, but I heard that most maple syrup is not real. It's artificial. So be careful if you go to Canada and you put maple syrup on your pancake or waffle. That maple syrup is probably artificial, not real maple syrup. You know, maple syrup comes from the tree. That's too difficult. Artificial maple syrup is easier to make. Celine, expensive in Canada? Yes. Australia is more expensive than Canada, but Canada is expensive. That's why the person I know from Vancouver wants to move to Philippines. Yeah, Vancouver is too expensive, especially buying a house. It's like $1 million. Florin, is maple syrup that popular in Canada? Yeah, we use it for pancakes and waffles. Tom, microdust in Korea. I'm going to Beijing in 2 weeks. It's macro dust over there. Yes, Tom, you are going to die in Beijing. Thomas Clark here is I'm going to out you, Tom. He's an American teacher living and teaching in Taiwan. He's joining the chat just to bother me today, but he's going to Beijing in 2 weeks. How long are you going to stay there, Tom? Because that air is terrible. Rizal Fikri, what about the river in Canada? Is it great natural? Yeah, you can fish in rivers. Everything is clean. Well, not, inside the city, don't eat the fish, but you drive 1 hour in any direction, you're going to find nature. You're going to find clean lakes, clean rivers, nature. HW Cho, Grace Lim. I agree. I have searched way to immigration, easy way to go to Canada College and do a co-work in your college time and get a job where you find, hey, no Korean, man. I'm going to ban you from this chat if you're speaking Korean. I don't, this is an English chat. If you can't speak English, you got to go, man. I'm strict on language. Florin, how is Canadian food? Canadian food, it's multicultural food. We have food from all the immigrants who are coming into Canada. They bring their food. There's all kinds of food. There's not really unique Canadian food. Canadians eat like every other country. Chicken, corn, whatever, bread. There's not many Canadian dishes. Abdel Raham, I want to know how far I went in my journey to fluency and what I should do next. Is there some guiding steps for this? Like you, Abdel Raham, you're all of you are on your journey to fluency, and I would say, I would first ask, why do you want to be fluent? Because probably advanced is enough for your life. fluent, basically you have to live in an English-speaking culture to be fluent. Or in your country, you have a lot of foreign friends and you're always reading and listening to English media, you can become fluent. But I don't know why you need to become fluent. My advice, if it's related to work or study, advanced is good enough in your own country. If you're moving to an English-speaking country, yeah, you should try to be fluent. But I don't know your plan, Abdel Raham. Florin, can you cook Canadian food? Again, there's no Canadian dishes. I can cook. Canadians eat rice. I can cook rice. Canadians cook potatoes. I can cook like that. Nora, thanks, teacher. Tom, don't knock artificial maple syrup. I grew up on that stuff. It's made me the man I am today. Oh, that's what made you the man you are today. Well, then I'm going to say to everyone, don't try artificial maple syrup. A year and a half at least in China. Oh, Tom, don't go to China a year and a half. At least. Nora, do you like Korean foods? Because I wanted to eat them. Yeah, I like some Korean food. Not all of it, but, I eat Korean food every week. Thomas Clark, Aunt Jemima was what I ate. My dad was a purist and ate pure cane syrup. Ooh, too rich for me. Yeah, Aunt Jemima. That's what I grew up on, too. Funny note, Tom, when I was 12, my costume for Halloween was Aunt Jemima. Because Aunt Jemima is a brand, for those of you who don't know, Aunt Jemima is a brand of maple syrup, and the logo has a picture of the Aunt Jemima, the person. She's a black woman with, I think, a red, I forget what to call that. And for Halloween, I dressed as the black Aunt Jemima in the 1980s. That would be impossible now. Florin, what are the health problems caused by maple syrup? There's no health problems that I know of. Artificial one, there's no health problems. I'm just saying most people don't realize that when they're eating maple syrup that it's not real maple syrup. Noreen, Australia or Canada, which one you like? I like Australia. If I was a student and I wanted working holiday, I think Australia is better. Nora, do you have Line or WhatsApp group? All the links are below, Nora. If you check down below, you can see all my groups, and you can join it. Florin, which are the livable places in Canada? Every place is livable, Florin. Grace, now I want to travel Canada. I've traveled America before. Is Canada a better place to travel? I should try. Canada is a little different than America. I think you will like Canada. Abdel Raham, okay, I'm going to travel to USA to work. Okay, fluency is important. That's why I want to be fluent. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think keep doing what you're doing, man. I remembered your video, and that was a very special video you sent me. I showed my friends. I was very happy to get that video you sent me. Keep doing what you're doing. To be fluent, you have to get more into English media, books, TV, music, movies. You have to start going more into that way, less of the studying English. You're chatting with me, that's great, but don't go to English classrooms and don't study English textbooks. Get more into the culture, English culture. That will help you to become fluent. Florin, how many WhatsApp groups do you have, Robin? My groups are 3. My groups are 3. Rizel Fikra, sir, what is the original car that produced in Canada? Canada does not make its own cars. Now, in the 1960s, Canada signed some deal with America. And that deal was Canada would not make its own car. And in exchange, America would make car factories in Canada, giving jobs to Canadians. So in Ontario, you can see a lot of American car factories making American cars, but this is giving jobs to Canadians. So Canada has no car. Abdel Raham, why people are preferring Canada over the USA? Well, I'm going to tell you my opinion. First of all, Canada is easier to go. It's easier to visit, just even on a tourist visa, it's easier to visit Canada and stay longer. Like I say, Koreans can go to Canada for 6 months on a tourist visa. That's very generous. Also, Canada, I think, is more multicultural, more diverse, than America. Americans, I don't have too much experience in America. Maybe Thomas can help if he's still watching. Americans tend to break off into their groups, usually ethnic groups, whereas Canada, that doesn't happen so much. So it's very diverse, and the people are friendly. They're more trusting than Americans. Some people may say that's naive, but yeah, Canadians can be friendlier. Nora, I want to improve my English. What is your idea? Well, you watch my live stream all the time, and you talk in my chat groups, and you study English every day if you're serious. Florian, am I able to go on foot to Canada? You mean walk to Canada from Eastern Europe? No, you can't. All right, guys, it's almost time to finish. I'm going to close this up in about 2 minutes, so any last questions? Canada's maple syrup is better. Their girls are less crazy too. I wish I was Canadian. Tom, you are honorary Canadian from now because you're such a nice guy and so friendly. You are now an honorary Canadian. Congratulations. I will give you a medal next time I see you. Grace Lim, recommend best place to travel? Well, you should visit Vancouver. It's a beautiful city. And then from Vancouver, you want to go to the Rocky Mountains. Banff, beautiful. As a tourist, just go to Vancouver, maybe Whistler. That's where the Olympics were, in Banff. And then maybe Toronto, Montreal, Niagara Falls. That would be a good tour as a tourist. Rizal, how call cookies in Canada? We call them cookies or biscuits, but most of the time cookies. We're jealous. Oh, Abdel Raham, we're jealous. We want our WhatsApp group to be mentioned as well. There are 3 WhatsApp groups. I love all those groups equally. There's so many, there's hundreds of people in each group. it's hard to. Two of them are public. One is not open to the public. Nora, my best teacher, thank you. I try to watch all your live streams. Thank you very much. Layla, thank you. Thanks for your live stream. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a lot about Canada. Again, I haven't lived in Canada a long time, but I still have family there and still visit there sometimes. As I said, I'm not very nationalistic. I'm not really in love with Canada so much anymore, but it is a good place. It's not paradise. There are many bad things there. I have links below. If you're interested in getting information, go to those links. And also, if you want to chat with me after the live streams, I'm probably in the Wechat group. Tom, Robin is definitely the best teacher. Handsome. Oh, thank you, Tom. All right, thank you guys, and see you in the future. So, whatever the next live stream, probably it's always the same link. So when I close the live streams, I'll update the links, and I'll have a new topic, and I'll tell you the time of the next live stream. And if you want to watch my other live streams, they're also on the site. If you are watching now, to help me out, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. That will help me out a lot. Okay? Thank you, guys. Thanks very much. It was nice talking to you. Talk to you again soon.